Has it ever confused you when you pour your heart out to a man and then he turns around and tells you that he's not attracted to you right after you do that? Isn't it even more confusing when the guy that likes you the most is the guy that knows absolutely nothing about you? What if I told you that's because making men fall in love is about strategically understanding how to listen more, but talk less? Which is why on today's show, we're going to be discussing how to make men fall in love without talking. That way you can stop being so unappreciated by men and instead have them begging to understand you better. So we're going to start off here with number one, the easiest trap to fall into when you are making a man fall in love without talking is something I know a lot of you all struggle with because you're trying to figure out where is the line here. How do I kind of maneuver around this? Because Thompson, you tell me all the time that I should let these men talk about themselves, I should let them ramble, I should even let them trauma dump. And I feel like if I do that too much, I'll get to a point in my relationship with him where he now comes to me to only trauma dump and he never asks about me, he never cares about me. And instead of ending up as a girlfriend, I just become his friend that he uses to get things off of his chest, and there's no real romance here. I want to kind of break this down so that we can understand this easy trap. What does it look like to be in a position where you've fallen for the trap of now you're letting him talk, but instead of it inspiring romance in your relationship, it's inspiring you just being like a friend that he trauma dumps? There's going to be no romance in the process of him trauma dumping on you. We want men to talk and we want them to talk about themselves. But what we want when it comes to kind of like being a girlfriend, we want this to put him in a trance. We want him to feel like, wow, I'm having such a good time with you on this date, and I feel so good around you because of how much I'm sharing about myself. Now, he's not going to realize that. This is the type of rhetoric that he will speak when this is working properly. When we're allowing him to talk and you're using the power of listening and not talking properly in a way that gets you closer to being his girlfriend. What he'll start to feel like is, wow, we're having great conversation. Things are really flowing. I feel really close to you. I feel like we're really having a vibe. Now, one of the things that I also want to point out to you, see, yes, we're going to put them in a trance. And yes, we're going to make them feel good and they're going to want you so badly and all that good stuff. But what could also happen if you end up becoming just a trauma dump friend is he doesn't even bother to ask you anything. He doesn't care about what's going on in your life. He doesn't care to ask you any questions. He doesn't care to ask you any follow-up questions. He doesn't even care to ask you basic information about yourself. That's a key sign that you're falling into the trap of, rather than not talking and allowing him to talk and just listening to become his girlfriend, you're actually becoming kind of more of a friend. Pay attention to how interested he is in you, because when you're becoming a girlfriend, when you stop talking and you actually listen more and you're good at asking questions all at the same time, also what will be happening is you'll create a lot of mystery about you and who you are and where you're from and where you're about. And at a certain point, that mystery will start to bubble up within him and he'll say, but what about you? I wonder about you. You haven't told me much about yourself. Periodically, he'll kind of remember, hey, I want to learn more about you. I'm very curious about you. I'm curious about where you're from. I'm curious about how you think and all of that good stuff. If you are not doing this properly, there will be no mystery. And the reason I say there will be no mystery in this trap part, in this friend part, is because he is not actually even curious about you or about your life. Because this relationship or whatever it is that's going on in between you guys is not really about him getting to know you better or caring anything about you or this relationship. It's just about letting him get his own self off. All right. Another thing to kind of take note of, notice the difference between someone who is discussing things about themselves and their life because you're asking questions and you're such a good listener and you're very inquisitive, versus someone who is just coming on a date with you or a hangout with you to rant about things going on in their life. As time goes on and you recognize these things better and you practice these things, you'll get better at realizing the difference between someone who you just have in a trance because you're asking such good questions versus someone who's literally just ranting to you about everything in their life and there's no real romance here. Point number two is about interest. We want to gauge what level of this is coming from the fact that I have him in a trance? And what level of this would we describe more as a dump? We're not just not talking in order to allow a man to just dump on you and talk all the time and whatever the case may be. We're doing this strategically because we want to figure out how we can be a more attractive version of ourselves and create some mystery where the guy actually has to lean forward a little bit. What we're trying to get done here and accomplish here is we're trying to set the stage for the man to actually feel like he wants to learn about you, to actually feel like you're fascinating to him. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to come onto our dates from the very beginning saying, okay, so I'm going to tell you my life story from literally my birth and conception all the way until now. We don't want that because that's not creating the right level of aura to you, the right level of mystery that we want men to have when it comes to you, the woman, because that mystery will incentivize him when he goes home after this date to say, I want to see her again because I want to learn more about her. I want to understand her better. I want to be around her to soak her in more. All of that stems from the motivation of the mystery of you. We want to gauge what level of this in his interest level is the dump and what level is the trance. So how do you properly gauge that whenever you're with a guy or when you're talking to a guy? Similar to how I talked about before, you want to be thinking, well, is this a rant here? Or am I prompting these questions? Do you have romantic interest in me as we're having this discussion? Or are you treating this more like, hey, I'm just here to get certain things off of my chest? This will be a very important gauge for you. If you guys are going out on these dates, and these conversations that you're having where he's sharing of himself still end up leading to him doing things for you, whether it be, paying for your date, being courteous for you, asking you out again in the future, and continuing to take action for you, then you more likely have this guy on a trance. An easy way to spot if you're really just more in a dump stage is he will do things like call you at 2 a.m. where the two of you, instead of it being like, hey, you guys go out on a date, you guys have a conversation, you're asking such good questions, he's in a trance, he's so seduced by you, all that good stuff, it will come in the version of he'll say, hey, I know it's late and I know you're probably half asleep, but I just really need to talk to someone and I have no one else to talk to. Can we go for a long drive? As time goes on, everything or every time you guys meet will be, hey, I just need to get some stuff off my chest. I just need to talk to you. Can we go for a long drive? Is this also coming with him doing something for me? Is he taking action for me? Is he showing me that he wants me in a romantic sense? Or is he using all of the times that he sees me as a way to extract from me in the sense of saying, hey, I need to dump on someone. I need to get some stuff off of my chest, because then we're not doing this the right way. Right? We're not doing this how it should be doing. So the reason I'm saying this is because making men fall in love with you without talking is also about understanding how to put yourself in a position where he's actually falling in love with you, not just using you. So we have to be gauging that as you guys are having these dates and as you guys are having these hangouts. And point number 3 is about being vague. One of the things you've probably made a mistake of before in your dating life, trust me, I've been there as well, is when you get on a date, you feel like it's necessary to give people a book-like description with all the details of exactly who you are, where you're from, where you've been, what you're about, and what you've been through from start to finish. That is a mistake. One, it's way too much information for a first date. It's unnecessary information for a first date. And all of that time you spend talking is less time for him to talk and less time for you to learn about him and understand him better. This book thing we want to avoid because we don't need to be giving men all these details about us that aren't really even helping us to get to where we want to go. So why do I put the word summary here? Being vague strategically is about understanding how to answer questions in an efficient manner. In an efficient manner to answer questions, meaning how do I get to the crux, to the essence of what it is that I'm trying to say without ever going too far into dumping without not spending so much time talking about myself that I don't give myself an opportunity to ask him questions and ask him some follow-up questions to better understand his mind and where he's coming from. Being efficient with your answers in terms of your summary means you have to know how to get to the point. These are the type of things we want to understand when we're going about our dating life, because this is going to help us be a lot more vague. How do you actually go about being vague in a good way? I'll give you a nice example. Let's say a guy says, okay, tell me why your last relationship ended. This would be an example of a vague but efficient answer. You know, me and my last guy ended because we just were very misaligned. I know I'm looking for a man who's a leader. I'm looking for a man who has very particular qualities as a masculine man. And I just at a certain point in our relationship realized he didn't possess those qualities. And once I realized that for sure, I just knew that he was no longer the man for me. And then we broke up, we ended the situation. Do you see how I'm giving you an answer that feels very direct and clear? I'm summarizing the situation without getting into too many details about everything that transpired. It's an answer that feels, when you hear it, you're like, oh, I'm satisfied with that answer. I can understand what you're saying here. We're here to listen and listen strategically. We're also here to create a little bit of mystery. It's okay to allow men to work for more answers. Why? Because as he gets more intrigued, and especially as he's intrigued and then the date ends, what do you think the first thing he's going to be thinking to himself? I have more questions for her. I want to understand her better. So we're trying to get you in a place where you're good at flowing in conversation, talking a little bit without saying too much, sharing a little bit where people feel like this is an open, honest conversation without going so overboard that you're taking over all the conversation and then you're not learning anything about him and you're also not creating any mystery within yourself. Point number 4 is about your prep. I give you questions that are great to go onto your dates and ask men. I give you things that you should be thinking about and looking out for when you're going out to these men and when you're meeting them, and that you should want answered. That's great. However, when you go out on these dates and you're asking such great inquisitive questions, remember that eventually some men will start to become curious about those same things about you. So part of your prep here will be understanding and anticipating that all of these great, amazing questions that I go on my date and I ask this man will be reversed back onto me. And if I'm not prepared to answer these questions, I'm going to stumble and fumble on my answers. I'm not going to answer them efficiently. And I might start ranting and rambling because I'm nervous, not thinking about what would happen if I got asked the same question. In your situation, you are essentially the artist here. You get to paint a frame here of everything you've been through, of your friends, of your relationships, of your life, your traumas. All of this stuff is part of the person that you have become up until this point. And you have to understand, part of your prep should be going into your dates knowing how you're going to frame each one of these topics about yourself. The reason I say that is because, 1, I don't want you rambling and going off on a tangent. Number 2, I also want you anticipating the type of questions you'll receive from someone else so that you can control the narrative. Controlling and understanding how to control a narrative, especially when you're on a date, can be the difference between getting a second date and not. Because the reality of it is, men are going to choose to take you on a second date or not based on their perspective of you. If they see you as a particular type of woman based on how you talk about yourself and talk about your life, they're more inclined to say, I want to spend more time with this type of woman. Subsequently, they could also go on a date with you, hear you talk and be like, I don't really like your vibe. I don't think that you're someone I want to spend more time with. And the thing about it is, you do that as well. There's plenty of men that open their mouth, and as soon as they open their mouth, you're like, oh, you're super unattractive to me. And in fact, now that you've opened your mouth, I don't even like you anymore. Vice versa, the same thing can happen to you if you don't go on your dates prepared for the types of questions you'll receive, and prepared in understanding how you're going to frame the narrative of each one of these most important topics that will come up in your conversation. We're making sure that you answer questions quickly and efficiently in a way that feels very direct, like you're not avoiding anything, but also doesn't allow you to get into trauma dump territory yourself or put you in a position where you're oversharing and not allowing there to be any more mystery. If everyone knows everything you're doing 24/7, ain't no mystery to you, and subsequently ain't no aura to you as well. Point number 5 is about the runway. See, you are the runway and the man is the plane. What I want you to start doing and get strategic at doing when you go out on your dates is understanding how to give runway to men to land their plane on your runway. What I'm actually referring to is the psychology of giving men just a little bit in your answers and in the things you say about yourself, and allowing them to do a little bit more work to get to the destination of the truth or the answer. What does that look like in a practical sense? Let's say you two are at a restaurant, and let's say you guys are having a discussion about food, and you say something like, oh, I remember one time I had the craziest meal ever. It was just, you wouldn't even believe it if I told you. See, this is one of the ways where you can create a little bit of intrigue and make someone say, wait, what? You had the craziest meal ever and it knocked your socks off. It was amazing. What was it? Honestly, I shouldn't even bother telling you, because you're just going to be like, no, you're crazy. You're insane for eating that. You're not even going to like it. I can't even tell you. It's just not, forget it. Come on. I'm not a square. What was it? Nah, it's not even, forget it. I shouldn't have even said it, because when it's kind of nasty. I shouldn't even said it. But you see how, like, when you let people kind of work a little bit for your answers, you're creating a little bit more intrigue. Even in something as silly as, what did I eat that was really weird and strange? Because you want to know what that does. You're creating an effect where people want to lean in and they want to kind of understand more. What is it? What is the thing? And when you can start to create this psychological effect on an ongoing basis with the guy that you're dating, we actually have a very good thing going, because now we have a guy who is very intrigued by you, very fascinated by you, very fascinated with understanding you. So then the less you continue to talk, the more a little bit frustrated and agitated he is, because the more he wants to understand you. It is like a version of being a tease, because the reality of it is, men, they respond to that psychology. They respond to that way of you being as a woman, being a little bit of a tease where you give him just a little bit and then he has to land the plane. The reason I'm calling it a runway and a plane is because all you're doing is providing a runway for him to land the plane on. He has to take control of the wings. He has to figure out how he's going to get this on the runway properly, but you're just allowing him the space to take control here. There's a very, very important psychological effect to this, where as time goes on, you're going to basically copy and paste this same psychology that you're going to be using on your very first couple of dates to the rest of your relationship, where all you do is provide your man with a runway and you allow him to land his plane on your runway as he sees fit. What you're not going to be doing in the business of your relationship is to be doing all the steering and controlling for your man, because then you're going to be in your masculine energy. Point number 6 is about the follow-up. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy in a visual so that we can all be on the same page. Let's imagine that this here is a cake. And on this cake, there is 4 different layers. So you have your top layer here, which is your icing. And then you have here, which is like the cake layer. And then you have here, maybe this is the brownie layer. And then you have here, which is maybe the cookie base. I want you to think of this very important concept when it comes to the guys that you're dating. Follow-ups are such an amazing way to get deeper into himself, his life, and into answers that you probably wouldn't have done if you didn't ask that question. Because one thing that you're trying to do when you go out on your dates, in terms of making men fall in love with you, but at the same time gathering information, is you want to understand, how does he process information? That communication will bring both of you closer together. 1, you'll understand him better, so you'll feel more comfortable around him. Number 2, as he's talking more about himself, he'll feel closer around you. So how do you do follow-up the right way? Anytime he makes a statement of something that he did or he said. So let's say, for the sake of example, he said, oh, me and my friends always go to the bar on Saturdays, and that's our favorite place to go. That's our favorite place to spend our time. A very simple question will be, why? Asking that will actually get you a lot deeper into answers that you probably wouldn't have gotten unless you asked a simple question like that. Asking for the why and the how on an ongoing basis whenever a guy is talking to you about himself or his life, he'll be forced to tell you reasonings as to why he did the thing that he did. This is great for many reasons. 1, it forces him to think a little bit deeper into not just surface level, okay, I did A, I did B, I did C. It also forces him to think, well, why did I do A? Why did I do B? Why did I do C? And as he's saying that and he's getting deeper, now you guys are having a little bit of a deeper conversation. Each why, each how that you will give a guy will get you a little bit deeper, I should say, in these layers. And you're trying to understand him on a deeper level. You're also trying to get him to go deeper within himself in a way that forces him to respond to you or answer questions or say things about himself that he probably wouldn't be talking about on a very first date, simply because you're asking him, well, what is the why and what is the how? Even if he says something like, oh, I work a sales job. Well, why? I work a sales job because it makes me some good money. Well, why don't you work a different job that can make you a lot of money? Well, the sales job I got in through school, and when I went to school, that was just the most common thing. Well, how come you didn't choose a different field? Well, I don't know, my parents always, just told me that, sales would probably be the best thing for me. How come you just did what your parents told you? How come you didn't do what you wanted? What is it that you want to do? And you see how when you introduce why and how to your follow-up of your questions, you can start going deeper and deeper and deeper. And you can go from talking about how much he loves football to how, he feels about the fact that he never got to spend any time with his father watching games. And it's something that makes him really feel really connected to his family that he wants with his son, right? You see, like after a while, understanding how to use follow-ups properly in every situation, you'll see how you get to go so deep in the layers of a human being. And once you're going to this level of depth, you stand out so much more in his mind. As you're standing out so much more in his mind, because you're asking the questions and answers are so much more intimate, now all of a sudden you're bringing a much deeper emotional connection between the two of you. For something as simple as asking why and how. Instead of thinking about how you're going to talk about the next topic or switch the topics, right? You just focus on, okay, give me the reasoning. Give me how did this work? What came from this? Why did this happen? It's good for people to be around you and be forced to go just a little bit deeper.